Okay, enough. We've gone on too long with the non-hockey
Canucks
talk.
Conversation. Figure it out, Quads. Let's go.
Yeah, Canucks Conversation. Okay, we're here. We're talking about tanking. Do you want to start with the lottery simulator before I get into some stuff here? Because I had a few thoughts on a few things.
No, I think we should.
You want me to give my thoughts on this?
Yep.
Okay. Been discussed a lot in the past 24 hours. We didn't really touch on it on yesterday's show.
Got the audio, by the way. You didn't do any prep. Got the audio whenever you want.
Got the audio, yeah. Alex, let's hear the audio. Jim Rutherford talking about accidentally tanking. Obviously, he's making a joke, and I'm going to talk about how I think this is so stupid that some people are like, I know it's a joke, but I'm really mad about this. So let's just hear it. Jim Rutherford talking about tanking.
I thought we were tanking. We're pretty close to the bottom. But I would never, running a team, go and tell the coach or the players, don't play hard for this game. They have a job to do, to come to work every game and try to win that game. You want to ask a question?
Well, but your decisions in terms of organizational moves you're making, how you set up the roster, that's a different story.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay. And so as we go into the second half, we can make different decisions as how we go about doing our business. I don't view that as tanking. The players have to play hard. The coach has to coach to win. But we also have to make decisions on where we're going in the future.
I have some thoughts too. You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Obviously, like, nobody's ever going to come out and say they're tanking. Like, did the Buffalo Sabres say they were tanking?
No.
They didn't say they were tanking that year. They were going for Connor McDavid. Never ended up even getting him. Don't get me started with the whole Edmonton thing. Those oily boys over there, the witchcraft that they pull off in that city of Edmonton. I don't know how they got all those beaches over there, but nobody's going to come out and say they're tanking. But it's like Jim Rutherford said, like, it feels like they are, right? Like, a lot of the things that have happened on the ice have looked like tanking. Giving up the second most goals against per game, that feels like tanking. They're obviously scoring a lot and producing a lot, but now you have an opportunity to move into, listen, they're never going to call it tanking. It's just like what Jim Rutherford says. He's never going to tell his players to lose. He's never going to say that they're tanking.
It's not tanking.
But trading Bo Horvat,
there you go,
tanks your chances of winning games. Trading Luke Shen tanks your chances of winning games.
Unbelievably so, almost.
A little bit. But, trading Andrei Kuzmenko and his, 17 goals, whatever he's at now.
We got to get to that, too. That's an odds and end thing.
That tanks. Yeah, no odds and ends on the report today.
Okay.
That tanks your chance of winning. So it's not like you're taking the organization of the team and saying we're all going tanking, but certain things that you're doing are tanking the chance to win games. So that's what I look at it as. And I think those moves can be accomplished this season with how you look at the trade market, the pending UFAs, the guys who aren't going to be here for a long time. Absolutely, you can tank.
Okay, so
they won't say it though.
Here is my thought. I'm driving home today, or driving this morning around, and I'm listening to the Jeff Merrick show. Okay, and Merrick and Friedman are talking about this tanking quote from Jim Rutherford, and they were like, "This is is this a shot at Bruce Boudreau and the players? Like, that's not nice," type thing. And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" As somebody who's around here every day, I was like, cry me a freaking river, like world's smallest violin type thing, right? And I was like, these guys are so out to lunch. What are they even talking about? Okay, now I thought about it a little more, and I'm expecting people to have the same reaction that I just described to what they were saying to what I'm about to say, because I thought about this a little more. And, basically what they were saying was, is him saying, oh, we're accidentally tanking, like, is that, a shot at the players, that an unfair shot at Bruce? And I was like, okay, like.
And by the way, as he said that quote, there was like a little smirk there, like,
yeah, exactly. He's
made
joking.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I thought the question that was asked was talking about.
Yes.
Was actually Farhan setting up a question to ask about Demko being held out longer.
Yes.
Which was also an interesting answer. We don't have the audio for that, but it was.
But let's get to it after. Let's get to it after.
Sorry.
About tanking, right? They were like, okay, well, obviously it's a joke, but it's a joke at your players and coaches' expense. Are they going to get upset about it type thing? And I was like, world's smallest violin. Now, I understand people are probably going to have the same reaction to what I'm about to say. And what I'm about to say is I thought about it a little longer. And what I kept thinking about is like, okay, if he says that quote after a 6-2 loss at home to the New York Islanders, or whatever it was, when they just looked so listless, they legitimately looked like they weren't trying, looked like they didn't care. I'm sorry, but this past road trip where they didn't get many results, they got one win. You can't fault this team's effort on that road trip. Like, every loss that they had on that road trip, for the most part, came down to roster construction. It came down to them just not being good enough to hang with the top teams. Like, that's what it came down to. And look, if I'm a player, and again, world's smallest violin, I understand these guys get paid millions of dollars. I understand people aren't going to like this take. I get it. But if I'm a player, I'm thinking, screw you, man. Like, I was like, I just put in effort on this road trip. If I'm Elias Pettersson, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I'm trying every game. The guys around, and maybe Elias Pettersson's a bad example because I know there's all that stuff about, oh, does he want to stay? Does he not want to? I'm not going to get into that. Any player, for example, let's use, I don't know, Ethan Bear. Okay, we put in a really good effort, and you're talking about, aren't we tanking? Like, our team sucks, but does that come across as Jim Rutherford looking inward and saying our team sucks because of how it's constructed, or aren't we tanking because our players aren't trying hard enough, or our players and coaches aren't good enough? Like, I think and not to contradict myself immediately, but in the context of what he was saying in the rest of the press conference, he took a lot of ownership for the roster. He did say we can't move contracts that we'd like to move, but also goes to that point. If you're one of those players hearing that, where you hear our core isn't the problem, it's the players around them. If you're a player around them, you're probably thinking, like, you know what? Why am I even trying for this organization right now? Like, maybe I will just go mail it in, like we saw at various points this year. Like, I'm curious how, and again, I'm not trying to blow this into a thing that's bigger than it is, because I hate when people do that. But I am curious if any players were legitimately rubbed the wrong way by yesterday's press conference.
I'll tell you what, a lot of the players who think they're going to be here long term, like, you hope Elias Pettersson. Quinn Hughes has a long contract. JT Miller has a long contract. I think that they maybe can have the long game view of some of the stuff that Jim Rutherford said, but you're right. Like, Ethan Bear needs a contract after this season. I don't think that yesterday's press conference makes him more excited about it, about the next year or two. Like, it's not like Ethan Bear is signing a 5-year deal, as much as I think that's a player they should do that on. But yeah, it's a difficult spot to be in. The tanking thing's interesting for me because you bring up an interesting point about, like, yeah, that's not going to, I don't think it's going to piss the players off because they're clearly aware of where this team's at.
Yep.
Right. They're not going to say it. That's just kind of the dance that they have to take with media, where they're not going to say, like, we're not going to make the playoffs. But, if you had true serum, do you think that every player in that room is like, we still got a chance of making the playoffs, man? Just got to have a good second half, man. We can catch all these teams. I don't think so. Like, no. I think these players know what's going on with this season. And that press conference yesterday, does it help the thought of tanking more for these players? Maybe. Like, maybe it puts them more into that camp. And the comments from Jim Rutherford absolutely cement.
I want to get to a couple comments in the YouTube live chat here.
Sure.
Jeff Rowe jumping into the chat and saying, if he isn't telling them not to play hard, he may as well have done it after yesterday. Corey Anderson jumped in the chat, said, no way, Quads. They lost those games straight up because their PK sucks. That's fair, but the PK is still put together by the general manager and the president, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to say that their PK is hitting way below what we thought they'd be. I mean, somebody's got to be the worst PK in the league, right?
Sure.
Didn't think it'd be the Canucks, but also, Thatcher Demko's not here. The goaltending hasn't been fantastic. Like, it hasn't been bailing them out. And again, the thing that we keep coming back to is just everything we've seen this year seems like it could be solved by Thatcher Demko being unbelievable like he was last year.
Yeah, I see Corey in here saying, like, saying that the whole roster doesn't suck. The whole roster doesn't suck when things are going the Canucks' way, right? But as soon as one of those, like, pillars of what this team has to have success breaks, which multiple ones have this season, where special teams, obviously the penalty kill is letting them down again this year. And it is, like, Corey's got a point that, yes, it is historically bad. That's for sure. That's a big thing that's costing this team. You can hear JT Miller talk about it yet last year. I remember at the end of the season talking about, hey, like, they would have probably been in a playoff spot if they're a top 5 penalty kill last year. For sure. Like, they would have been a playoff team last year if they weren't historically bad like they were last year.
But they're not.
One of those other pillars this year that's missing is the number 1 in the NHL at 5-on-5 goaltending. They don't have that this season.
Yeah.
When you don't have all the pillars that, have to align for this Canucks team to be good, you start to see a lot of the cracks and the flaws in this team. And that's kind of what we're seeing a lot more of this year, where they're scoring goals. Like, right? They're a talented offensive team. I still think that if you were to just put them up against a lot of different forward groups in the NHL, and you're just like, if you just made the playoffs off of what your forwards can do offensively, the Canucks are a playoff team. Absolutely, in my eyes. They're absolutely a playoff team, but that's not how the NHL works. And this team has to rely on so many other things going their way to be good, that those things that aren't being good for this team right now and helping them step up, it's tough. It's really tough to see. And I mean, what's a new coach going to do to this group? Change some things around for sure. I'm a little worried about what a coaching.
They're going to get the dead cat bounce.
Yeah.
The other point of what I wanted to say about on tanking before we move on to the Atlas Goods poll question here is that this team, and we heard the word retool, and I know it pissed a lot of people off yesterday. We talked about it on yesterday's show. Good little chat we had about it.
Oh, great question from that guy too.
Retool versus rebuild, right? And it feels like if this team wants to retool, which they do, they can tank this year. Like, they can offload the things at the deadline, because I understand looking at this year as a dud, but I don't understand not just offloading what you have here, because what that is here is part of your retool. Like, is Connor Garland part of a retool? And I know Connor Garland's probably one of the players he's talking about when he says we can't move these contracts.
Yeah, actually, I had a point that I wanted to bring up, and it's great that you brought that up because it helps me ask this question. Who's here in 4 years of this team that's right now this roster? Which players are here in 4 years?
OEL's cap hit in some form.
Yeah. Okay.
JT Miller.
So JT Miller. Let's count how many there will be. Okay. JT Miller.
Yeah. OEL.
His money. Let's talk about the money of the contract.
Yeah. Elias Pettersson. Quinn Hughes will still be on his contract. Yeah.
Is Thatcher Demko still here in 4 years?
I don't know, Chris. He's going to expire in 3.
Is Vasily Podkolzin still here?
I
would say so.
You would hope, yeah.
I would say 5 there. Is Huglander here? I'd be pretty surprised if Huglander's here still.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll find that. So we got 5. Anybody else in the chat, let us know if we're missing someone here. I got 5 players that I think will be here.
Like maybe Ethan Bear as a third pairing guy. Like maybe. Very strongly maybe. You're illustrating the point very, very well, though, that there's no need to clutch at your pearls as you are on the Titanic going down.
So if
right?
if you're 4 years away and I see 5 players, am I missed a better chance to me is like, you have a better chance of seeing Lekaramaki on this roster than Ethan Bear, in my eyes, in 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so like that. But what I'm saying with this current roster and the players that you have and how the cap's being affected, 5 players from 4 years will be, I think, on this roster. You can feel pretty good about them being here. That sets you up to really walk into a rebuild then, because you can deal with 5 players.
But
you can rebuild around and not change 5 players.
So it doesn't matter what the word is, though.
I know, I don't want to do this again with you because you're wrong. I'm right. The retool thing that you want.
A retool, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're building around 5 players, one of whom is JT Miller, how is that not a retool?
That part,
Jim Benning's retool ultimately failed, and this is really dumbing it down. It has a lot to do with the players they targeted. Linden Vey trades don't help, all that sort of stuff. Sven Berchi, I'm not going to get into it, but they built that team. They retooled that team around the Sedins and then Bo Horvat and Brock Besser. I like, and this is no disrespect to the Sedins. It is a little bit of disrespect to Horvat and Besser. The caliber of player with Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, the 2 guys that we would actually like to see them rebuild, retool. I don't give a crap what you say around. I'm much happier with that foundation, because what do we keep talking about, Chris? We keep talking about we're trying to retool a house that has no foundation, right? Mm-hmm. If you actually have a disciplined retool I'm not going to say retool or rebuild anymore, okay? I'm not going to say either word. If you have disciplined roster construction based around offloading what's not working here and making some tough decisions, which Rutherford said he's going to have to do, to shape your team around Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, I don't care what you call that. That's what this team should be doing.
Yeah.
And I don't even think fans that are saying, I just want to rebuild. I don't even think a lot of those fans are saying, I wish they would trade Pettersson and Hughes for picks.
No, and here's the problem that I think the retool rebuild thing that we've heard, and it's because this is how Jim Rutherford has said it, is I don't think fans want to see the 2-year fix when they can have the 4-year fix, right? And to hear from the president say that what we want to do is target these younger NHL players. The quote about guys not working out on their ELCs, that's not what you want to have as your high-end target.
You're right.
Okay, so I understand. That's kind of like, I know we've been arguing, and I see Kevin in there saying the semantics don't really matter. That's right. The retool versus rebuild thing, you're right. It is just a word, like Jeffro said. But to me, the way that I look at retool is what Jim Rutherford is saying. He's saying they want to do a retool. He says they don't want to do a rebuild. He says he wants to do a retool. He says they want to bring in these players that are in the NHL.
Yes.
Says they want to give second opportunities to these guys. Sure. But I don't think that's where, like, I don't think you should have to give up these players of value like a Horvat, like a Shen, like a Kuzmenko to get those type of players. You can find those type of players. Anthony Duclair was like,
Ethan Bear cost him a 5th-round pick.
Exactly. So, like, sure, you can do that, but I still think the focus here should be getting the high-end players. Find yourself another Elias Pettersson at 5th overall. Find yourself another Quinn Hughes at 8th overall. Like, get the draft picks where even if the Canucks finish in the mushy middle at like 13, maybe if they have extra first, they can trade from 13 down to 7. And hey, there's that right D we've been looking for. There's that guy that's going to be helping this team at the high end where you can fill in with the retool after, but as a base, you really need to target those type of players first in my eyes. Still.
The thing I keep coming back to, Chris, and the reason I want them to trade for picks, the reason I want them to tank this season, like make some moves where you were trading for picks, and we'll get to the Kuzmenko stuff later. The reason I want to see them make these moves, Chris, is because the last time this happened, the last time they accidentally tanked, and I keep bringing it up, 2016-17 season. Look it up, folks. They made some deals at the deadline that were clear tanking moves. They moved on from Yannick Hansen. They moved on from Alex Burrows for future assets, okay? One of those ended up turning into Linus Karlsson. One of them was Nikolai Goldobin. Young players, kind of the same thing as Rutherford. Say what you will about who they chose to target, all that sort of stuff. It's not the point. The point is they made those moves, made their team worse than it already was, tanked their positioning in the standings, finished with the second worst record. Only team worse than them was the Colorado Avalanche, and I don't have to tell you what they've done in the years since. What does it get them, Chris? They fall in the draft lottery to a spot that if they finish second worst this year, they legitimately couldn't fall to under the new rules. You can't fall out of the top 3 if you're the first worst team or whatever, right?
Yep.
They fall to 5th overall. Who do they select? Elias Pettersson. This guy that we're talking about, hey, you know what? A retool might actually work because they can actually build around this guy. He is someone worth building around, as is Quinn Hughes. And sure, maybe they didn't tank in the Quinn Hughes year, per se, right? They were just bad, which, you know, that's a lot of the Jim Benning era Canucks. But the 1 year, keep in mind, Trevor Linden still worked with the organization at that time. Not reporting anything, just something I'm interested that I was when I was looking back at this. Trevor Linden is still with the team in 2016-17. They make those rebuilding moves, whatever you want to call them, I don't care. They make those moves for future assets. They tank their team in the process, and it gets them Elias Pettersson.
I like having it. I had to have a chuckle there because as you're going on your big rant, and what does a 5th overall pick get you? I just see Sonny's comment in there. Oli Ulevi. So great, excellently timed comment there.
Yeah, and then Sonny even said, "Imagine they took Tkachuk that year."
Let's not go down that road.
Look what Tkachuk just went for.
No.
Anyways, okay, we're done. We're done talking about tanking.
Okay.